Thank you, Chairman Farrell. I also want to thank you, Senator Young, for welcoming me here tonight, although I didn't anticipate saying tonight when I arrived. But I do want to genuinely thank you for this opportunity to come and talk to you today. And I want to say first off that having had the opportunity to hear all of my fellow mayors, that I join in most, if not all, of everything that they talk to you about today. I'd like to take a moment to offer some different thoughts than they did, and some thoughts about the state of our democracy here in New York, with a particular emphasis on the growing disconnect between the general public and the political class, and what that growing disconnect means for our ability to govern. And yes, budget effectively, which after all is just setting priorities. Our state's recent past, and especially this past year, has been notably marked by a dark storm cloud of public corruption and self-dealing. And this cloud darkens the door of every elected official, the honest and the dishonest, the state and the local officials, cheapening public service and discouraging good people from entering into politics. And as that cloud shadow grows, it helps feed a corrosive sense of us versus them that drives down voter participation, stifles growth, and people's sense of equitable public policy. Corruption, in a word, is toxic to democracy. And sadly, even as the appalling toll of that storm's damage to both individuals and institutions continue to mount, its fundamental root causes remain unaddressed. And one of those root causes is the insidious role that money currently plays in our state's politics. Because of the LLC loophole and other chasms in our campaign finance laws, we have a system where an individual or a corporation can pour virtually unlimited amounts of money into candidates and causes and do so in a way that effectively masks the true identity of the contributor. I have taken the step of voluntarily refusing to accept contributions from LLCs, and I would urge you to take action to eliminate that loophole statutorily. Another root cause is the barriers that have been erected to prevent greater voter participation. If voter participation rates are an indication of the body politic's health, then we have a grave illness that needs our attention. In the 2014 elections, less than 1/3 of New York State's eligible voting population participated. We can and must do better. And to that end, I urge you to look at 3 proposals that have been proven to increase voter participation rates. First, to allow a 20-day early voting period as exists in 37 states in our country. Second, to allow no excuse permanent absentee voting. Currently, there are 27 states that permit this type of absentee voting, which allows eligible voters to request a ballot that can be submitted by mail without mandating the voter declare reason. This reform is a stepping stone to explore vote by mail policy that has been implemented with great success in Washington, Oregon, and Colorado. And third, as Oregon has recently done, enact universal voter registration, whereby individuals are automatically registered to vote at 18 unless they choose to opt out. This groundbreaking proposal will almost certainly boost Oregon's best in the nation turnout rates that exceed 80% in presidential years. I say that to you again, 80% presidential years. Imagine what our democracy would look like here in New York if we could reach those voters. It is worth noting that voter participation is closely tied to demographics. Racial and ethnic minorities, the young and the poor, have the lowest participation rates, and ironically, are most impacted by government policies. And as a result, some of our most vulnerable populations are left with a diminished voice in their government. In Syracuse, we live this. As you've heard many of the mayors before me talk about their overwhelming poverty rates. Our numbers are stark. We have one of the highest poverty rates in the United States, exceeding 35%. And we have the highest level of poverty concentrations among Blacks and Hispanics in the 100 largest metropolitan areas. The Syracuse City School District has the 4th highest poverty rate in New York State, with more than 3/4 of the students qualifying for free lunch. If we are going to replace poverty with true opportunity, New York State must stand up for these children from birth through college. It begins with prenatal and early child home visits by nurses and family outreach workers. As I heard today, was asked of Mayor de Blasio to commit to family nurse partnerships. These programs and others show that we can improve high school graduation rates, the health of students and families. We need to make sure that quality, affordable childcare is available to every family who needs it, and New York needs to fulfill its promise to provide every 4-year-old with access to full-day pre-kindergarten. Based on the Campaign for Fiscal Equity court ruling, New York State was ordered to pay our neediest schools more. And under that ruling, the state currently owes New York State schools $4.8 billion. And of this, the Syracuse schools alone are owed $63 million. Our students need and deserve this smart investment. New York can afford to invest in creating opportunities for all children to make sure that they succeed from birth through college, and we must do that. Another topic I'd like to address in general terms is our approach to economic development. I say our, in the sense that economic development is often a collaborative process between various private entities and levels of government, each with its own set of tools. My concern is that our current approach to economic development is uncoordinated and essentially a trickle down, relying too heavily on big tax breaks for big developers in exchange for promises of dubious benefits for taxpayers that often don't pan out. Earlier, you heard me speak of the corrosive effect of corruption, and I would argue that trickle-down economic development also plays a role in undermining people's faith in government. At a time when income inequality and economic insecurity is palpable for many New Yorkers, including Syracusans, we continue to pursue a failed top-down strategy that only exacerbates the problem. We need to begin to rethink our approach to place emphasis on economic development that serves the public good, where taxpayers can see and feel a real return on the investment of their tax dollars, and gives people a true sense of opportunity. One of those places, as you've heard me speak before about, is infrastructure. And you've heard many of the mayors speak about infrastructure. It is vital to the core mission of government, and it transcends public parties. The signs of a functioning government to the average citizen are paved roads and clean waters and the ability for trash to be collected. And as New Yorkers, we have a history of understanding that investing in infrastructure spurs economic growth for everyone. A Federal Reserve study found that infrastructure expenditures has a huge multiplier effect, and every dollar yielded an outcome of more than $2. Competing needs for operations and infrastructure are putting local governments at a breaking point. And we have seen that, and you have heard that firsthand from many of the other mayors who have spoken to you today. There is little question that local governments are in desperate need of partners to ensure that the infrastructure we are once so proud of is fixed, updated, and maintained. We only need to turn on the television or read the newspaper to see the dangers of ignoring critical infrastructures as playing out tragically before our eyes in Flint, Michigan. We saw it in Troy. We are learning about it in Hoosick Falls as well. One would be hard-pressed to find a greater cautionary tale of a toll that budget neglect can wreak on a community. What is happening across the country is a stunning indictment of the age of deferred maintenance and its disproportionate impacts on communities of color. I urge you to do everything in your power to ensure that the necessary investments are made to help ensure that no New York community suffers the same fate. Thank you for allowing me the time and the opportunity to testify before you today. And I look forward to working with you to make sure that the promise of opportunity is attainable for all New Yorkers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions? Mr. Magnorelli?
Yes. Mayor, thank you for waiting.
It's my job, Assemblyman.
Mine too. It's been a long day. Again, I've been reading some of the things that you've just said, and also your comments, I think, in the Times Union. I'm not sure if I got that one right or not. Been a lot of things I've been reading lately. But the idea that we can, I guess I don't see the plan. That's what I want to ask you. I don't disagree with you in terms of the things that you have set forth here and that we should be striving to do, all of them. There isn't anything that I disagree with. On the other hand, the amounts of money that it would take to do those things across New York State are a lot more than increasing taxes by 1% on the rich. It would be humongous amounts of money. So all I guess I'm saying is, I understand what you're saying, so this is kind of a statement to at least say to you, I hear what you're saying. I think it's very important that we get into these issues and that they're talked about. But at the same time, I've got to deal with a budget for this year, for New York State, for the cities across New York State, and how do I deal with that? So I'm going to ask you, just for Syracuse now, the same questions that I've asked basically every other mayor that's come up here. Is AIM enough? And how do the other programs that the governor has put in place, how do they work? And with Syracuse, because of the report that came out also, some of the things that he has been, the consensus report I'm alluding to, some of the things that the governor's programs put in place would help that. So with that in mind, I know this is kind of a rambling question, but I hope I'm getting my point across.
You are.
What do you think?
AIM is not enough, as you've heard each of the mayors say, the mayor of New York City. AIM is not enough. It's been flat, and we have seen our pension costs, some go up. They're starting to ratchet down for us here in Syracuse, but as we see the market underperform, we worry that in December, the pension costs are going to go up again. Healthcare goes up. Binding interest arbitration awards come down for police and fire, and they really hamstring us. So we are dealing with a situation where our revenues are flat, and yet our expenses continue to grow in large leaps and bounds. I would tell you that in terms, every budget, having to do Syracuse's budget as mayor and during very challenging times for the last 7 years, I understand it's about setting priorities. And there are lots of needs and not enough resources. But I would share with you that the more we ignore infrastructure, the more we ignore the kind of pernicious effects that poverty is having on the people of this state, we will no longer be seen as a place of opportunity. 1 out of every 2 children born in the city of Syracuse, the city of Rochester, the city of Buffalo is born into poverty. And because of the programs that have been systematically and quietly eliminated by the federal government and some by the state, those children and those families will not have an opportunity to escape poverty. And they will become burdens for our criminal justice system, for our social services system, but most importantly, all of us, I think, who are in public service, we believe that those children and families can be an asset to our economy. And until we start looking at economic development in a way that includes everyone and doesn't just depend on giving tax breaks, we're going to continue to see the futures of those families and children across our state, and obviously I'm very concerned about Syracuse in particular, continue to grow. When you look at what the governor admirably did in his State of the State and budget proposal talking about the poverty initiatives, but you look at that map of where those numbers are, that I think is a telling sign that we need to approach economic development differently. That we have that many children, that many people in our state living in those kind of circumstances.
Well, I'm going to just make one more statement to you, okay? As a friend, which we have been for many, many years, we disagree on some things, and my concerns are that we create jobs. So we'll continue to do that, but I definitely want to thank you for your comments and your thoughtfulness in terms of putting these in the forefront of this committee and what we should be looking at when we're looking at a budget. Thank you very much for being here.
And Assemblyman Magnarelli, I appreciate your comments, and I also want to take this opportunity to thank you for the support and the resources that you have given the city of Syracuse, so we have been able to put them towards our planning for infrastructure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Kruger.
Hi, Seth. Thank you, Mayor Minor. I know it's late. So we haven't been friends for many years, but I find myself agreeing with you on almost everything every time you do come up to testify before us. So I want to thank you for your testimony and the globalness of your thinking as a city mayor. And just to highlight, perhaps not a question, but pointing out, reinforcing what you were talking about with, are we putting our money into infrastructure where we should be? Are we putting our money into economic development that might not actually gain us what we need? I just want to point out, at the transportation hearing last week, people came to testify about upstate rail, both passenger rail and mass transit and freight rail. And I asked both sets of testifiers, were they eligible for state economic development money? And I was told no. And I have to say, even if you have disagreements about the concept of what you're doing with economic development money, it's hard to believe that we in the state of New York spend so much money on economic development, but we don't recognize that urban infrastructure and rail and mass transit north of Westchester is actually relevant to the future of the state of New York. So I do just want to say thank you for staying so long, and not just speaking on behalf of the people of Syracuse, but I think the issues are there for the people all over New York State. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kruger. I just would like to, I appreciate very much your comments and just say that, as I have said here before, and you've opened the door, so I'm going to say it again, you know, the city of Syracuse was put on the map because of the Erie Canal, which is the first major piece of infrastructure that opened up the West and transformed our economy. So infrastructure is part of our history, but it's also part of our history as a state. When you look at the MTA and the Tappan Zee Bridge and the Long Island Railroad, and when you're looking at also what is going on with people talking about the quality of water across the country and also drought, we in New York State are blessed with lots and lots of water. So water and water infrastructure is going to be a tool and a way to do real economic development. It's going to be the oil of the 21st century, and if we can take advantage of it, then we will be the beneficiaries. And when I say we, it'll be all New Yorkers, not just a small segment of the lucky few.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much.
Further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.